within, let's say, a frame of maybe 45 minutes to an hour. The fact that you could actually expand, as a business, and you started expanding and say, all right, I'm not necessarily comfortable, or I don't have, let's say, the legal means, or I don't have, let's say, the proper infrastructure to actually hire people from everywhere in the world, but today I'm able to hire not just in my city, but in every single city that I have in my country. And that again, the idea was basically not just having a bigger pool, but a much more diverse pool usually can give you different types of perspectives in your teams, and that pushed actually companies and hiring teams to have more inclusive recruitment practices. Uh, because having access to a diverse, let's say, pool of talent doesn't mean that you as a company can leverage that, because having an inclusive recruitment practice also requires companies to have proper people trained on what does it mean to actually have some sort of bias when it comes to particular areas when you're hiring people, or when we are interviewing people. So these practices started to happen, and also something I need to really emphasize here, that diversity means all different things for all different types of businesses in all different countries and all different cities. What you need to keep in mind, the term itself has to be, let's say, aligned to the way things are done in that particular city, country, or market, because we're talking about diversity of thoughts, diversity of genders, diversity of people with different backgrounds, social ones, cultural ones, languages, and so on and so forth. But you can literally, from the same city, still build a diverse pool of talent if you're not necessarily targeting a very particular pool of people. When we look at the type of companies that have built such workforces, you have Andela, which is a major tech consulting provider that operates across Africa. You have GitHub, that is the most and the let's say the most successful remote first company. GitLab, the most successful remote company in the world. You have companies like Mural. You have companies like Miro. These are Western companies primarily, obviously, but we're seeing today also, when we look at the Middle East, more startups, more tech companies embracing that. Not just because they want to do that, but also because, as I said, a few minutes ago, they are most probably limited in terms of the type of talent pool they have access to. So they decided, you know what, let's go for this. Let's make sure that we implement proper let's say remote work policy. And this has been also let's say facilitated by something that is called employment of record. So an employment of record basically is a company that hires, you hire people and you get them hired through that company specifically. So this is a payroll company, and these employees of record are basically global ones, and they can literally hire people from everywhere, not necessarily all the countries, but they have usually more than 100, 120 countries they can hire from. So your company can be sitting in Belgium and Cote d'Ivoire and Brazil and in Canada, in Palestine or whatever, but still, you'll be able to hire people because you're hiring them through that company. I'll give you examples. You have Deal.com, you have Remote.com, you have Oyster HR, you have some other, let's say, smaller players that coming in and that are focusing more on particular regions. But it's happening because most of the issues that a lot of also companies have been dealing with when hiring people from abroad is, I don't have any legal representation in those countries. How can I hire people? How can I go through the holder of understanding, what are the legal implications? So what employers of record actually offer is just take care of the hiring as a company. We'll do everything that is necessary for you when it comes to the legal and admin side of things. You just need to get someone through, have them sign an offer, and they'll be paying these employees for you through their payroll. Next. All right. So the shift, which is, I think, what is actually happening now. The reason why I say I think, because I always believe that since it's a very changing, let's say, topic, I always say that, by the end of the day, there are probably, things that we do not necessarily see in our markets, or that could be changing very fast in the next few months. So there is a general trend we've seen is that, and I think you've seen it all over your LinkedIn or social media platforms. You have the huge fans of remote work, and the only way to do things is remote work. And then you have, in office is better. We need to be sitting together. We need to be meeting each other every day. We need to make sure that the economy is working, because when we go out and go to offices, we spend money. Well, we go to these very little shops, and it makes the economy work. And you have a very small group right now that is rising in between, that is bringing people in the center, let's say, and talking more about, let's say, hybrid work and how we can leverage that. Personally speaking, I think the ideal way of doing things moving forward would be hybrid, but again, it depends on each business case. It depends, how work cultures react to these policies, and everything in between. Why the reason why hybrid work is important, because based on the last few years where we had this very massive, let's say, experiment on a global level where people didn't know what to do. Okay, we're sitting home, we're not sitting home, we're doing this, we're not doing that. Having something in between seemed like an ideal idea, because you're having that kind of flexibility, and not necessarily going to the office every day, so you're not necessarily also spending that much money every single week. You're also having much more focus time, so you can actually deliver versus whatever you've been assigned. And then you have on the other side, that fact of being able to go in an office, connect with your peers, in a different way, and then making the office actually an actual collaboration space versus what have been done before. And I think a lot of you have seen that meme on the internet where people say, that it says, "Oh, we want you to come to the office for the culture," and then there is a picture of an open plan, let's say, office where there is literally this, let's say, small boxes where people would be working and not talking to each other. That's the kind of culture that has been quite out there for quite some time, but it's not necessarily the case again, in a lot of places. So yeah, something in between that allow people to do this and that, to allow people, parents and non-parents, younger people, much older people, to actually also do whatever they have to do, because there is also that issue in the entire world where most of the jobs are being done in 9 to 5, and most of the let's say, public offices, governmental organizations, services are open also from 9 to 5. So you have to make a choice of either doing your job or doing X and Y and Z because you need a particular piece of paper from them, for example, from a government. So there is that kind of balance where also companies are saying we're hiring adults, and when we're making decisions to hire people, we need to make sure that, all right, I trust you enough to do this, and I'll also trust you enough if you have to leave for a couple of hours every day, or not every day, every now and then when you need something, but at least you need to be able to deliver, on your objectives. And that's why it doesn't make sense anymore to actually talk about, let's say, jobs that are 35, 30 hours, 40 hours a week. It doesn't make sense. Uh, the type of company that will be successful in the very near future and beyond that are going to be companies that will be assessing people only on output. Will they deliver that in 30 hours, and 25 hours, and 40 hours? That's their problem. They could be, doing that for a longer period of time as well. But that's basically it, because you actually decide, you actually put people in a position where they have to lead themselves. And if I'll be able to deliver something, on a quicker, in a quicker, let's say, time frame, then why not? So I can create more time to do other things, be it for my team or for myself. And it takes radical change, because let's face it, I think you're listening to this, and most probably some of you are saying no, it doesn't work. In some cultures, if you're going to an executive, or a senior manager or a people manager, whatever, you're telling them, hey, I'm done with my work, and by Thursday morning, can I just have time for myself? It doesn't work like that. That's not the point. The point is you being able to balance time and to make sure that you have enough time to do everything you need on a professional and personal level. And that requires, adapting to change. And I think, even in our personal lives, change is hard to accept regardless. And you have also generations that got used to doing things in a certain way, and it doesn't necessarily make them comfortable to do things in a different way. It doesn't make them bad. And I know there's a whole debate between Boomer, Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z. No, it doesn't work like that. People having preferences for certain things It's just that because they got used to doing that for a very long time, and regardless of how you push things right and left, sometimes it's not necessarily easy to move the needle even a little bit. On the other side, you have technology that is moving much faster than what we used to. Uh, when we look at, I don't know how many people, for example, in the room today were were there when we moved from the non-internet era to the internet era. I'm not talking about social media. I'm literally speaking about the 90s and late 80s. Um, and during that period, yes, we've seen technological advancements. We've seen internet coming slowly, even it was painful to go online for a few minutes. But something we remember at least about that period is the pace of change was much slower than now. So what used to happen 5 and 10 years before is currently happening in 1, 2, 3 years, depending exactly on the industry, depending on the type of technology you're trying to leverage, trying to use. Still, there would be some other, let's say, technology that would take much more time to be leveraged by people in workplaces because there are much more complexities around that. And the very basic example would be VR and augmented reality, because let's face it, it's nice. It's happening in very few organizations, maybe the minority of minorities, but you don't necessarily, for example, have a proper telco infrastructure in every country to allow you to have a very fast, internet speed that would deliver these kind of experiences in a way that is comfortable for everyone, in a way that people enjoy it, actually. That's the first thing. Second thing is we did not get there yet. We did not get to a point where having that kind of, let's say, VR technologies stick in your face is not mainstream yet. Yes, we're seeing it. We're seeing what, for example, Apple did. We've seen what Meta did with the Quest Pro for a very long time. But everything that they're actually testing may end up with something that we will be using. I would love to tell you exactly what is it, but like everyone, I think we're all trying to figure out what is happening. But augmented reality and virtual reality, even if they are not used as they are, they can become a baseline of anything that is coming after that. AI, I think there is nothing new about that. We've seen in the last 2 years how insanely fast the changes are happening. I don't know how many of you are using, for example, a tool called Midjourney, which is an image generator, which has a Discord where you can do that. I've been a very early user of my Midjourney, and when I see that a year and a half ago it used to be V1 and today it's V6, the difference in terms of output is just crazy. You don't think about that. When you look at it in V1, you're saying, okay, maybe 3 or 4 years we'll get somewhere where we will maybe generate a proper image of a house. No, it's giving you a very detailed architected house in a year and a half. When we look at generative AI in terms of text to text, text to image, text to video that happened recently and that will be released to a bigger public from OpenAI, no one expected that these changes, would be happening, as fast as we see them, and we see that already. Obviously, I know and I understand that some companies are not necessarily comfortable to see their employees leveraging AI to deliver their tasks, but it's also up to the employees to show them, what's the difference, what's the impact on the bottom line of the business. Can we do things better? Can we do them faster? Can we actually optimize the workflow we're having? And that takes usually people who believe in this kind of technologies, so they can actually be ambassadors, of implementing such technologies. In the last couple of years, everywhere I went and everywhere I decided to show executive teams that this is what we can do with AI, I've never had anyone say no. And the reason is simple. Execs and senior leadership will care also always about, the business bottom line, costs, and profit. If you find them ways to cut costs anyway and, to increase their profit margin, no one will say no to that. Absolutely. The danger and the risk we're also we're getting into, of course, is how much impact AI will have on our jobs. And it had already, and it's have an impact on our jobs. It's just that we cannot track that, on a daily, weekly, and a monthly basis because it's just happening. And a lot of companies are making decisions based on that, but making it look like, oh, it's we're optimizing, our work, let's say, processes, our workflows. They're using, that kind of jargon that makes it look like it's something super sophisticated. But by the end of the day, we are already at a stage where we're seeing companies, especially at a large scale in the tech business, cutting jobs and using, let's say more tight teams to deliver on whatever they want. Data analytics also, one thing that maybe people outside of tech, are not seeing, but we're seeing more and more the importance of data analytics versus software engineering, and that happened for the last 10, 15 years. Primarily, software engineering became the king in the room. Everyone also wanted to become a software engineer, or everyone wanted their friends to become, or their sons and daughters to become software engineers, because that's the future. Let me tell you something. Software engineers are going to be impacted like everyone else when it comes to AI influencing, the way we do things. But to be able to make these decisions, that's why, data analytics, is taking much more space, within companies. That's why also for everyone who is young, let's say, or still at the very early stage of their career, may sound a little bit out of topic, but if you would like to have that type of career where executive teams listen to you, and even if you're not a tech person, you need to be really good at data. I'm not saying engineering data. I'm saying leveraging the type of data that data engineering team will give you, and going back to the exec team saying, this is what it means to see X and Y and Z, and this is what we should be doing moving forward. You see a lot of people on their resumes saying data analysis and research. It doesn't mean anything. When you actually talk to people, very few actually understand, how to read data. Again, you may not be necessarily the person organizing the data, but you should be the person who actually can transform that data, that clean data, into something that is much more valuable for the business. Expectation of Gen Z in the in workplace, and this is a huge topic. We can also, speak for hours. A lot of people are also assigning things to Gen Z that could not be necessarily real, but there is something that I also learned a few years ago, and I think it makes sense. While we did create these different types of generations, and it has become a big thing because big consulting companies are are making business out of this. While it's not a new concept, by the end of the day, people want the same things. Let me explain what I mean by that. I don't think that you've met any person, regardless of their age, who do not want safety. I do not think that you met anyone at your in your life, regardless of their age or where you come from, where they do not want some sort of stability. They could be a risk taker, but somehow, if you're trying to survive or trying to make sure that you're, somehow healthy while you're navigating some kind of financial hardships or that financial risk you're taking, you'd like to be somehow stable. Some people are super stable, and that's why you see them sticking to their roles for a very long time, or sticking to what they do because they're not risk takers. Most people, or everyone would definitely would love to leverage human relationships around them to build that kind of a social circle around them. They don't necessarily need to be, let's say, very extrovert. They don't necessarily need to be introvert, but again, the idea is, regardless of where people come from or their age or what they think of, there are certain things that make people very similar. What is actually different, what is happening, from a different standpoint, is not because of people themselves. It's mostly because of what is happening in our world today. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, there was something else. Similar, let's say, type of events, but different events. Wars are not new, for example, but we have different type of wars. Economic issues are not new, but the reasons are slightly different, or let's say the decision makers are different today. So Gen Z today is coming in also and seeing something very simple, and I think we tend to forget about this. They're looking at millennials, they're looking at Gen X, at least the ones that are connected to them in a way within workplaces, and they're like, a lot of these people seem miserable, or they seem not happy about whatever they're doing, regardless of how financially successful they are, by the way. Because again, we're reaching a point where we've had people that are financially, let's say, well set, but not fulfilled, because not most, and a lot of people do not have necessarily that type of purpose, they're working towards. So they end up just doing things for someone else, and then that affects them in the long term. So Gen Z is seeing all of that, and they saying, you know what? If I'm going to be investing the same time as all these people, what tells me that I'm going to get a different result? So I'm going to do something different. And what is that, kind of difference is actually creating a life that has that type of flexibility so I can enjoy life or whatever life have to offer. So when I say life, I'm not speaking about particularly having fun. That's what people mistake. It's not about having fun, just having a life besides just, being in an office or going to an office or having your job, from a 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or 9 to 10, or whatever. And in the same time, they're also trying to figure out a way, what does it mean to be stable? Stability had a very different definition with millennials, for example. And millennials, this is not bad or good, they had their time and they came at a period where most economies were in their building phase. So they could leverage, that kind of progress. And, they got to a point where they're able to take their pension. Is everyone going to take their pension while they're contributing right now? I am not sure about that, but that's the idea. The idea is since everyone is looking at it and saying, you know what, there is a risk of not getting there, and getting there is it's basically a point that everyone is trying to define. So let's take the risk of thinking about something else. Let's take the risk of having flexibility. So as long as we are alive, I would love to have a slightly different life. Um, with all of this happening, and especially at the Gen Z level, because Gen Z is also, this is a generation where we're seeing a lot of people saying, you know what, I had my degree and I'm not going into university. And that is very normal because everything goes in cycles. What do I mean by this? Universities became a big thing in the last 30, 40 years. And everyone has to go to university, and you have to go to university, and you need to have a degree. And if you didn't go to university, everyone will be looking at you and saying, "Oh, what kind of failure they are." Parents, relatives, friends, society in general. And if people do not see you doing something else, actively being engaged in a different type of project because you didn't do university, then again, that would be a huge issue because we're all projecting anyway. And so what is happening is right now, is since we have reached that point where a lot of people have degrees, a lot of people have master's degrees, but how many people are getting jobs with that? I remember in the early 90s. I don't know how old or young I look, but I'm almost 40, by the way. So early 90s, when we used to hear that someone is taking a master's degree, that was a massive accomplishment. And that person was smart as hell, and there would be 100%, no doubt, getting, going forward and progressing with an amazing career. That's not the case today anymore, and literally anymore. Having a master's degree probably will provide you with an exposure in a particular domain, but that doesn't give you the practical skills to do things. And that's why we've seen the rise of certifications, accreditations, professional groups that are focused on a particular area that they would love to develop in. In the meantime, in the last 20 years, a lot of methodologies, a lot of processes, a lot of things have been created. And through these creations, they become certifications, and people are taking more of that. With that happening also, and with a lot of hiring managers and businesses seeing that having a degree is not necessarily something that defines how good or bad you are in a job, let's dig deeper and then look at how good you are when it comes to the core skills you need to deliver a particular job. So if you're marketing, if you're finance, if you're software engineering, or whatever, especially in software engineering, because I think that's the domain that showed everyone the way forward. Because when people saw that, I wouldn't say that you can become an amazing software engineer, but you can start learning to code, and you can become someone who can code easily in a year. Then it became 6 months, and then it became boot camps of 3 months or whatever. Then a lot of other domains started to say, you know what, maybe you can do something similar. And we have also, seen the creation of different types of jobs. I'll give you an example that you don't necessarily find in 99% of the universities in the world today. Being a product manager doesn't exist. It's a job that has been created with tech companies. And being a product manager, it's either you learn this, by starting at the very ground level, which is a business analyst, and then you go more on the product slash revenue side of things to become someone who's working on product management. You become as an APM, and then you become a PM, or you actually go through these courses, these boot camps that are happening, and you just take a product management certification. It doesn't make you obviously a product management manager from day one, but it helps you understand, what is it to be operating like a PM in an organization, so you can build from there. I'll give an example. You have BrainStation, which is in the US, but it gives all its courses online. It has product management, it has design thinking, it has digital marketing, like Google as well. But this is very particular, and they bring people who have expertise in the domain to deliver these courses. And these are boot camps of 2 months with actual projects you need to deliver. So yeah, and I'm telling you this also as a recruiter who have been dealing with hiring managers in North America, South America, Western Europe, North Africa, GCC. The only two places I did not do yet is Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. And everywhere you go in the last few years, hiring managers saying, forget about the degrees. If they have one good, it means that they can stick to something, but that's not going to be the qualifying, let's say, point to get a job or not. But what is it that they can do? That's why we have more assignments in hiring processes, because we would like to see in a practical setting, what is it that this person can do, and do they understand what they are doing as a digital marketer, as a recruiter, as a financial analyst, or whatever. And that has an impact, that it will have an impact on the workforce today, tomorrow, and the next few years. That has an impact on universities. That will have an impact on economies in total, because if you have less people diversity, and it's happening already, it's happening in big numbers. I'm not saying it's happening with minorities, it's happening in big numbers. If you have that, and then people are not necessarily interested in traditional, let's say, careers, and if you do not have, let's also enough of other domains that can absorb these people, we need literally as a society to think about the type of model we need to create, let's say, for people, because society is operating in a very basic way, and we tend to forget it. You have companies that have incentives from government usually, and then you have people being employed. When you employ X number of people, these people pay income tax. Income tax go to government, so government can spend money on us. If they're efficient or not, that's not the question today, but that's how it works. If you have less people being employed by companies to pay income tax to contribute to society, then something is going to get broken. So that's why we need to rethink everything we have around workplaces and the future of work. And that's why I hate it literally when people just look at it from a very micro angle. The issue today is more macro. It is literally what's the risk we are running as societies on a global level or regional level, national level, to be able to operate while we're having all these changes within workplaces. Type of tools you can use. So companies today tend obviously to use a lot of emails, because that has been a culture happening for quite some time. If not, you have an ecosystem of Microsoft 365 with Outlook, Excel, Word, PPT, whatever, and then on the other side you have the Google ecosystem with you have Gmail, Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets. It's basically the opposite, and you have companies operating around that. To be able to leverage remote work and have people work together in a way that could be sustained more in the long term, first thing that I learned, and I've seen it with my own eyes for the last 2 years, working with a US employer before moving to Dubai, email can literally be deleted. You can literally work, have a company operating without a single email. An email should be kept actually for only external communication, meaning that if you have external stakeholders who don't have access to your systems and platforms, yeah, it makes sense. Which means that would take you to maybe 2 or 3 emails a week, maybe 4, maybe 5, versus the hundreds and the dozens we see, and most of them are not actually, let's say, efficient or do not have any impact on what you're doing, but it actually detracts you from whatever you're doing. It influences, your focus every day. So you'll be just, trying to catch up with emails while actually having work to do. So for everyone who has a job that is relying on emails every day, or who feel that the only thing they're doing every day is doing emails, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you don't have a job. That is not a job, and I'm being serious about it. Like, that's literally, a place where you cannot learn. Forget it. You have payroll, you have a paycheck coming at the end of every month, good, but you cannot operate like that while expecting yourself to grow in your domain. In the most successful, let's say, remote companies, usually they have a strong documentation system. You have a workplace chat, you have video communication tool, of course, you have usually digital whiteboards, and project management tools. So what is it? What do we mean by documentation? So if you look at documentation, usually in most companies, you have SharePoint or Drive. You store a document there, and people somehow collaborate and put comments. it is not necessarily efficient or not efficient at all if you compare it, for example, to stronger system like Slack or Paper Dropbox. So Paper Dropbox is, it's a product owned by Dropbox, and Paper Dropbox is basically a documentation system that everyone can collaborate in. For a team or work on certain things, we can just build things together without having to spend days. Let me give you this. Let me give you that. Copy paste, and then so on and so forth. If you want something that is a little bit fancy, a little bit more complex, for more, if the company has more geeks, let's say people who are so tech savvy, then you go into Notion. Notion is an amazing, let's say, documentation system. It allows you literally to build the entire wiki of a company where people have access to all resources and they can actually contribute to these resources while everyone at the company have a trace of that. Then you have workplace chat. So most of the businesses will be using usually Slack or Discord. Discord for the most geeky companies. Also, if you find yourself in a very advanced tech company, then it's going to be most probably Discord. Discord, that is also the platform. There are a lot of video, let's say, video games. How do they call them? Streamers use a lot, for their communities, but it's actually used by companies. If you want something that is all, that is more aligned to the corporate space, then Slack, would make sense. Slack is good because it can actually help you create very small rooms and channels and discussions and threads that are easy to find and leverage versus trying to find information on in emails. Let me tell you something. Anyone in their company using Outlook 365, it had the worst search featuring component ever, knowing that it's built by Microsoft, but still, it doesn't allow people to find the information easy, as simple as that. When it comes to project management and tracking, you have things like Monday.com, like Friday, like Asana. These are basically, the type of tools that would allow everyone to have exposure to what we're trying to build while having track of everything, while knowing who to assign to what. When it comes to let's say video sharing, because if I'm sending you something and I need you to be able to understand. I'm sending you a presentation, a documentation, a strategy, whatever. I'll just record the Loom for you. For example, Loom is actually one of the companies that is used most of the time, where I can take you through something that I prepared. If I work in Australia and you're sitting in Palestine and another colleague is sitting in Paris, I need to make sure that everyone is aware of what I've done. And instead of just giving you that, I'll just also record the proper video on top of Loom. You have things like Airtable that is actually replacing, in a way, Excel and Google Sheets. It's an amazing tool that allow you to actually filter and create dashboards much more easily than Excel. You have tools for co-creation, also like Todoist. You have for co-creation, you can also use Miro and Mural, which are more tools, let's say, that are relevant for the design part of things and the visual products. So yeah. Now I'm back to using emails a lot because Middle East is emails, and I'm suffering with that. But I'm also trying to help different key people I work with to understand that we shouldn't be working through emails. But I tried this for a couple of years, as I said, having maybe a couple of emails maximum coming to me every week, and it's literally life changing. You look at work differently, at that point. Last thing would be, okay, what is it that we can do moving forward? I think it's easy. It may look easy, if a company especially have the resources and they say, okay, let's do this. Let's have, better policies when it comes to working remotely or having a hybrid, let's say, workforce. It is not actually easy to sustain because you need to actually understand what type of flexible culture you're trying to implement. Do you understand what's the level of autonomy required by each person you're hiring? Not everyone is autonomous, by the way. Not everyone is self-led. When people say in some job descriptions in a remote company saying we need someone with experience in a remote company, it's not just about that. It actually means you have to read it in a way where it says, can you lead yourself every day without someone telling you what to do? You're sitting somewhere in the world, and we need you to deliver. We need you to be able to and comfortable with that. Do we actually have the right leaders to manage remote policies, to develop strategies and to keep on building those strategies, improving those strategies so they become much more effective and have an impact on the bottom line of the business? Do we have policies that allow people to learn continuously and adapt to these kind of changes? Because again, changes is happening very fast. If you're sticking especially to the tech sector in general, or your job has a tech component, You shouldn't be just sitting out there and relying on your master's degree, on bachelor degree that you got a few years ago. It is not relevant anymore anyway after 5 years. After 5 years of working, you're not necessarily leveraging that anymore. And how can we foster this kind of learning culture? It's easy for a company to have a lot of resources and just to go there, what? Announcement, everyone, we have all these licenses from learning platforms, and we would like everyone to do this and that and to go every now and then and to learn. It does not work like that. You can have all the financial resources to do it, but by the end of the day, you can survey people or look around or let's say measure the impact of these learning platforms, and you'll see maybe that 10 or 20% are using them. So you need to be mindful, you need to be genuine about your approach, and you need to be able to understand that everyone is looking for growth opportunities, which is a word I hate because I hear it in 70% of the interviews that I deliver every week. But then when I ask people, what do you mean exactly by growth opportunities? I rarely get an answer because growth, is defined differently from a person to another. When I say that I'm trying to grow, or my job, or my role is, or my goal is to grow in a particular area, I can give you particular details and what it means for me. And that's what I expect from you. And that's what companies also expect, because companies are also, sitting somewhere where they're finding themselves, I don't have answers for this. And I don't know if we have representative of people teams here in the call today, but I understand how painful it can be to understand what employees want. It's exactly, and I'm sorry for this, and I'm also an employee like everyone here. It's exactly like asking a toddler, a 2 years old, a 3 years old, what do they want for dinner. They think they know, but regardless of what you offer them, most probably it isn't going to be necessarily aligned to their needs. So yeah, that is it. I'm not sure if it was too much or too little, but I tried to really cover as much as I can. It's an exciting topic. I get excited by it, and I somehow geek about everything that is happening about the future of work, because that's something I've been looking at, for quite some time, and I know it may impact me also in a way or another. But the only thing I can do is to keep up with everything that is happening.
Thank you, Daddy. I think that was very insightful, and it had a lot of great information and websites. I want is this presentation something maybe we could share with? Okay, yeah,
I made
then
it
that'll be
specifically for this. So take it, use it, copy it, do whatever you want with it. It's not an information that I created on myself. Like I created the presentation, but this is the type of information that is available. But I just trying to summarize key areas, of course.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. No, I think it'd be really interesting also if people just take a look at it at their own time. If you'd like, maybe we can start if anyone has any questions for you.
Absolutely. It can be also saying hi, just in case.
Yeah, who would like to start off maybe by asking a question?
And they can have an opinion as well.
You don't honestly you don't even have to agree with Dali.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is not hard science anyway. I mean, it's an area where people are looking at it from different angles. It has a lot of implications. It has a lot of cultural influences, a lot of technology influences. I don't think everyone, all people we know have an answer. It's just that everyone is trying to figure out what is it that we can do best individually or as businesses. But it's a matter of experimentation most of the time.
Yeah, and I do believe also with my experience in remote work and with TAP that I do think that a lot of companies can go hybrid at the least. And it could even be more valuable to them because that way their employee might be more efficient hybrid than they are while they have that 9 to 5, let's say.
True.
Would anyone else have any questions or would just like to say hi? Or Adnan, what new gen or upcoming high standard students learn or do graduate in? Can you speak through the mic, Adnan? It's fine, so we can understand your question more, please.
I think I get his question, but if he wants to, or I understand what he's saying.
Okay, then
Yeah.
feel free.
So it's funny because everything happens in circles and cycles. Again, when we go back to 80s, maybe 70s, there was a focus in a lot of, let's say, economies in manual work, which is okay. We need more skilled people to build, literally to build. Build houses, build buildings, build the companies we see today, build these hospitals or whatever, and that required plumbers, that we call people who are skilled at building electrical systems and so on and so forth. We left that behind, and if you want to know why, most countries today try to get if you like, let's say you have enough money, or you got a loan from a bank to build a house, to build a couple of rooms even. See how much time it's going to take you to find the right people to do that, because we don't have that many anymore. We don't have enough available people anymore. So we went through that cycle of, oh, let's build things, and then, oh, we have too many people building things, let's get them into universities, so let's build universities everywhere, and every single city needs a university, and we need decentralized systems. And then we had way too many universities, which is the end of what we've seen in the last few years, because we built too many, and now we have way too many people with diplomas, but not necessarily the market cannot necessarily absorb all of that. The next step will be the opposite again. We're going back to manual work because we need that. Obviously, even, let's say, manual work is going to be impacted by machines, and this is not new. We already have in all countries, by the way, and sometimes we forget it, we have advanced technologies in the manufacturing system. It seems like a boring industry, but by the end of the day, it's an industry that has a lot of, let's say, technological developments, and we see, be it in bigger businesses or, let's say, more medium-sized ones, companies that actually have, let's say, strong machinery and infrastructure to build things, meaning that manual work itself is also going to be influenced and impacted, but not necessarily exactly the same as white collar jobs. So I think the next thing would be doing more of that. I think also we're going to see the rise of people being able to create experiences. Everything we're going to see is going to be about experiences. When I say experiences, again, I'm not speaking only about the fun part of things. What type of experiences I can create for myself, what type of experiences I can create for my family, what type of experiences I can create for my community, for my business, for anything. And being able to create experiences is going to be, for example, something that is going to be on the rise, but also we're going to see the implementation of that in different ways, depending on the sector, depending on the countries. Another thing more people will have to go to is, yes, we will see an insane amount of artificial intelligence artificial intelligence, software, intelligent software that can literally generate whatsoever we have in mind, from images to videos to text to scripts to whatever, that will have an impact across different other companies. But the type of skill we will need, and that will go mainstream a lot also, is people who would be really good at managing AI, agents. And AI agents can be everything and nothing, because also, we're also trying to see what kind of, let's say, capacity AI agents will have in the very near future. It's still early stage, but in a year or two from now, we will have fully independent teams of AI agents, but you need someone who could be able to control all of that and supervise, let's say, the workflow they have, just in case there is a risk on compliance, there is a risk on the business outcome, there is a risk on anything we are doing as a company, because we're not sure yet that we're getting to a point where we'll be good at that. So I think that's why there are a lot of people say AI is not going to be replacing jobs. AI is going to be replacing people who do not know how to use AI, at least for today. So I think the younger generation, going forward for the next few years, they will be focusing actually on leveraging these systems in AI platforms, AI tools, AI agents, to create whatever they have in mind. Raj saying, how can remote work contribute to sustainability and reduce carbon emission? Simple, my friend. Less moving. You're moving less. You're creating less. Obviously, the the goal of worker remotely is not staying at home all the time, because that's also an unhealthy culture that has been widespread, and we've seen the impact on the mental side of things happening in different places. While some people enjoy doing that, and I'm not here to tell you go out every day or stay home every day, everything is balanced. Yeah, so remote work can be implemented from that angle. If you have strong believers within the executive level of your company that understand what sustainability is and carbon emissions, maybe you should be that ambassador telling them, all right, this is what remote work is. This is what it means for us. This is what it could mean for us. Let's go through the numbers. Speaking about data analytics that we said a few minutes ago, let's go through the numbers. If you actually care as a business through your PR and everything that you're trying to reduce your carbon emissions, what is it that we can do through implementing proper remote work policies so we can bring all these numbers down? Shandana says, how can companies ensure that remote work is inclusive and accessible to all employees? Companies do not ensure that. Companies, again, let's go back to what a company is. It's a private business. Private businesses have, two things that they're looking at: profit margin, costs, and the type of shareholder value that they're creating. Unfortunately, but that's the reality. We can debate all of this every day, but by the end of the day, the vast majority of businesses are looking at that. So companies do not focus on ensuring that remote work is inclusive. I think people themselves and new generations and let's say stronger teams would be able to emphasize the fact that this is why remote work is helping us becoming more inclusive. And this is what we should implement in terms of hiring strategies to become more inclusive, because you can be a remote first company, meaning that there is an office somewhere or no office anywhere. Everyone is working remotely, and you don't have any kind of inclusive, let's say, hiring practice, because same people are hiring the same people. Everyone is, they were referring their friends, so you end up in a circle where people are very similar. So it's going to be, the most important thing here is getting buyout from companies to tell them how important remote work is when it comes to let's say creating more diversity within the workplace, which will have an impact on the bottom line of the business. But in the same time, what is it that we should do actually to make sure that these policies allow us to be truly inclusive in the market, allow us to understand that there is a bias also in every single human being. And then if we don't have the right policies to, let's say, to counter that, then we'll end up having just a remote work policy, remote work environment, just as a formality. Adnan, I think students want to take coding as their career. They should be either extraordinary or go for AI machine learning. Normal coders and programmers would have no scope in a few years. Absolutely. And this is a debate you'll see a lot on Reddit. I definitely encourage a lot of people to go on Reddit to read. It is not science there, but a lot of interesting debates between people. When you say normal coders and programmers, it makes sense. Meaning people who are not good at, let's say, they cannot leverage machine learning, they're not really good at data, they're not really good researchers, they'll be the ones who will be impacted. And I said it already, during the session today, software engineers are going to be impacted. This is the type of software engineers I'm talking about, the regular ones. Front end, back end, if you're doing, the very basic tasks and you're doing copy paste everywhere, then most probably you're not going to be relevant. And it has already started a few years ago before AI, where companies started to look for software programmers and engineers that are business savvy. A lot of people can code actually, but a lot of people do not understand what they're coding from a business perspective. So we already started seeing, the type of key skills we're looking for in a software engineering versus, what is actually, in demand in the market. Amal, outside of AI, are there any recommended skill certifications to increase your value as a remote worker? I know with layoffs, some companies eliminate remote workers. Let me tell you my very radical thought on this. There is no such thing as not risky job anymore. I'm telling you this, and I know 100%. I wake up with the fact that maybe my job is going to disappear tomorrow or next week. I'm not talking about a month or year or whatever, because I see what is happening, and I see, how decisions are made, especially at the very high level. And on the other side, I see how technology is changing fast. So I'm literally having almost like a VIP view on the insane conflict that is going to happen. You have different generations coming with different demands. You have technology that is going to be heavily impacting, is already impacting the way we do things, especially on the AI side of things. And you also have executives that are looking at shareholder value and profit margins. When you look at all of that, I can tell you, you know what? Product management is still sexy, is still fancy. Everyone is looking at that. Go do that. Most probably it will be irrelevant in 1 or 2 years from now. And we're already seeing, by the way, the reason why a lot of people cannot actually make really good career decision when it comes to what is it that I'm going to learn, because they are not really keeping an eye open on what is happening in their businesses, in their companies, or in or let's say what is happening on their friends, let's say, careers. When you look at for example, the last couple of years, and with a lot of layoffs, a lot of tech companies said, we can be a little bit more tight, we can optimize whatever we're trying to do here. So why do we need a lot of product managers? So maybe we need some sort of a principal product manager who can replace 4 product managers, who can have a proper view on the core business, and then we don't need features, particular product managers for features. I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but there are literally product managers who actually worked on a very particular component of a feature, which can be how smileys appear in a Word document. That's literally a component that has a product manager. So we have actually also did something that is influencing negatively the value of product manager. I can tell you, you know what, why not becoming a recruiter, or why not becoming, I don't know, a AI agent, whatever. I may be wrong. I work in a job where, this is my daughter, by the way. I work in a job where a lot of people think we can be replaced, and probably yes. But my only job is to stay relevant 100% when it comes to what does it mean to be a recruiter in the age of AI influences and executive teams looking at shareholder value. And that job is actually just being an advisor, because a lot part of my job, let's say, are being totally replaced. Everything that I do today, for example, is something that I used to do manually, and it took me a long time to do that every single week. Now I feel like a Superman sometimes, because I literally have multiple agents that I use every week. Some of them I created myself, and some of them I found them, and I feel I can just leverage them because it's too complex and I cannot understand how it's built. So now I feel like I'm almost like a team of 5. I'm happy about that. But how the executive sees it is, Dali is able to manage all that ecosystem of knowledge and data, and can come back to us with what is called sometimes in some businesses the juice, the meat, which is basically give me the end goal, give me the right thing that I need to look at. Because if you're talking to an exec, you cannot just send them, for example, a Word report of 20 pages. You need to make all of that in one single slide, and that single slide has to be basically something that gives them the ability to make that last call, to make that business decision. So instead of asking what is it that I should be doing, you need to be looking around you, assessing properly what is happening in your domain, in your industry, in your country or region, and say, all right, what is it that I can transfer so I can leverage these skills in a different area, and what is it that seems to be like something interesting, at least for today and this year, so I can continue keep up. The answer by itself, the final answer, will come as you do things. But sitting somewhere and saying what type of certification I need to do, and you can have money to pay a career coach or whatever that is, it wouldn't take you anywhere.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I think it's kind of interesting. Oh, yes, Raj.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi, Dali.
Hi.
Yeah, Dali, like it's Raju here. So it's related to the question which I raised above. How can remote work can contribute to sustainable and reduce carbon emission? So I just got your answer. Just getting back to more into this. So how do you think that companies can come forward and because it's all about the sustainable living in the future? So how do you think like the companies can come forward and advise and like suggest the employees to participate in this, like kind of doing a remote work? Like how can companies can advise to the employees?
Again, I'm going to say something maybe I repeated several times. I think we're relying too much on what companies can do. And by the end of the day, we're forgetting also that companies are made of us. When I say us, people who work with these companies. If you let companies do whatever they have to do, they'll just look at shareholder value, profit, and cost. Simple. That is it. I know it feels, it is naive. It is when you are young, at the very, let's say, beginning of your career, you think of all the nice things, and you maybe find, that dream job and a dream company. But the more you advance, the more you see things, the more you get closer to executive teams and boards and investors, you see that the answer is the same regardless of the industry. So if that's the case, and instead of, as I said, waiting for companies to think differently, the only thing we can do actually, let's say, as as employees, is maybe create that kind of, not create, but operate as some sort of influence groups, because shareholders obviously influence decision making by looking at key components or key indicators, right? When which is not necessarily, again, what employees are looking for. But on the other side, employees also need to be understanding what is it that they can leverage, what is it that is important to them, in making sure that companies also remember that employees, at least today, are the foundation of a business. Employees in HR is seen as a cost center, yes, but without that, you cannot produce operations and profit and products and services or whatever. So sitting there really in between, making sure that sometimes, there are companies who create, let's say, influence groups by themselves, because they're saying, okay, we hear you, we understand what you're saying, but we don't have the right resources, or we don't understand how you do this. Do we have anyone who can lead this kind of initiatives? And this doesn't have to be your job, by the way. It can be really something that you're doing on the side to help the company, let's say, think about that. And you'll be able to help the company think about everything, which is reduced commuting, decrease office energy use, less business traveling, paperless operations, flexible workspaces, encouraging sustainable living. Something very, very small you can do, let's say, in basic, when you have a hybrid work policy, for example, you cannot have assigned seats in a company. You should have hot desking, which is basically, if you have X number of spots, let's say, in the office, and people will just book that, and everyone who came late, let's say, looking at the system, and the booking system, and they see that there are no other places anymore, they'll just sit at home or work from somewhere else. So certain things can be done, certain things can be implemented from a very basic angle, but it has to be led from an employee perspective versus the company side, because companies, either they don't have the same interest as you, or let's say they do not have necessarily, let's say, the type of goals you have. Mariam said not building so many buildings for offices.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're not building more buildings and
Exactly.
taking up more space for for offices and random headquarters.
Yeah, and it happened already. There was a crisis with a lot of companies that are still battling to bring back their employees in different countries, and they ended up having large offices they have to get rid of, but they cannot just get rid of because they have long-term leases of 5 and 10 years. So part of also the return to work, return to office, let's say, movement is led by real estate companies that do not want to lose profits coming from long-term leases. Everything is connected, my friend.
Yes, that is totally correct. I feel like also with having different options, I think in the long run it's cheaper for companies and they save more money.
Depends on the culture, depending on what they're trying to do. I would love to say that's the smartest way of doing it or not. I also learned the hard way as I grew up that perspective is perspective. Everyone can be different. If someone has a very strict idea in mind, especially at an exec level, sometimes you cannot just do anything about it, and you'll have to find somewhere where they can listen to these kind of ideas and understand that, okay, this is the future, but we need someone to help us do this.
Yes, that is totally correct.
So yeah, that is it. I'm going to have dinner, have a long night ahead, have still some work to do. Happy to be around. Thank you for everyone who stayed until the end. And as I said, Mariam, please feel free to share the presentation with anyone who's asking for it.
Yes, of course. I would love to share the presentation via email. I will have it sent down as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And thank you, Deli, so much. It was very insightful, and there's a lot of nice information that we can maybe start putting into practice to
Yep.
be more efficient.
Absolutely.
And thank you